Okay, so today what I want to do is I want to look at key performance indicators. That's the most important thing here, is about helping people understand what are the drivers behind their business, what are the things that are important to measure to move forward. I'm going to look at two sides. So I'm going to start by, hi Rose, looking at our own practice one-page plan and just being a bit more flexible about the sorts of things that we want to measure. And then I want us to look at a client's one. And if you've got clients that you're thinking about doing this with, then let's spend some time just brainstorming what are the areas of their business that you could talk to them about measuring. Ultimately, it's obviously their decision, because the numbers that we measure have to be important to them, important enough for them to be able to take action on those numbers. And that's really the key, that you can measure everything. And as accountants, we've got a wealth of measurement. And with all the software that we have as well, we could be drilling down to the minutiae of a business and measuring absolutely everything. But the important thing here is measuring things that are important to the end user, that will help them make an informed decision, will take action on some part of their business. And the idea of the one-page plan is to come up with maybe a dozen numbers, probably no more than that really, that we can measure with them, that then allows them to focus on the area of the business that needs working on in order to improve it. And so that will change, obviously, dependent on what's happening in the business. And that also means that some of these numbers, they're not there for life. They're there while they're useful. So a one-page plan is not fixed. It can be adapted and changed. So if I just share my screen now, I'm just going to share my main desktop and then you can see. Okay. So this is the one-page plan that's in System Builder. Okay, this is the Excel version. There is a Word one just for you to have a look and be able to show people it. This is the Excel version, which is the one that you would work on with your client. Okay, and I'm just going to, it comes in as different pages. So the first page here is about just setting out the parameters. Okay, so what's the year end, what month you're going to be in, the name of the business. And this particular one I'm actually looking at is the one for accountants. So this is the one where if you go into Coach Accountable, you will have be able to download the practice one-page plan, and this is what you'll get as your sort of starting point. Okay, but it is a starting point, and that's what I really want to be very clear about, is it's about giving you just some thoughts. Okay, so just a little quick overview. So first of all, we've got the parameters. So for you, your practice name, there's some little bits here explaining how to do it. Obviously the starting month of your financial year, and then what month do you want to be currently in. And this tab, this one, will change every month, because every month you will be putting in new data, and every month you want the one-page plan that it generates to produce just that month's data. So this one will change every time we use it. There is a page where we put all our targets in. Okay, and again, that's something you will work on, because if you've set your goals for the year, you need to set yourself some milestones, some targets. There is a data one, which we will then fill in each month with the key data against the targets. And then there is the plan. So this is the actual plan. It's slightly different. I just made it slightly smaller so you can see it. But this is one that I've created, obviously, for a practice. And this is the one we action. There can be graphs allocated to it, so you can start seeing trends. And there's just a little example of one here on the back page so you can see how it works. So the one-page plan, it's designed to work from the bottom up. And the most important thing is this bit, okay? The mission or the vision or the goal. So what is the point of this business? What are we trying to achieve? So you will have worked with your practice growth expert, or if you haven't, please do so, about what is it that you want is your ultimate goal for your business. Your ultimate goal is obviously going to deliver your personal goals as well, but this is the goal for the business, and this is the one hopefully you could share with your team so that they can see that, yes, they're being part of something more. So if you want to be seen as the most caring and supportive accountancy practice, or you want to be able to see whatever goals you've put in there, you want to put it in that vision mission, because from now on, anything that we measure, any action that we're going to take, we are going to come back and say, is it moving us towards that vision, that goal, or is it taking us away from it? Okay. Now, where that's really useful is if you're the sort of person that likes that bright, shiny object, that sees that new piece of software, that sees that new idea and loves to go for it all the time. And that's great because you want to be innovative and you want to try new things. But every time you do that, you can come back to this vision and go, is that helping us move towards this, or is this moving away from us? So we can think about that. And that's where it comes into its value as well when you're using the same thing with the client. If you've helped them work out what it is that they want that business to deliver and be seen as, then we can actually then say, okay, why are you doing this? Will that help you move that towards it? So, for example, if you're working with a hairdresser and they want to be known as, I don't know, the top hairdresser in South Yorkshire, how do you prove that? Okay, so that needs to be a bit more smart. So actually, how are you going to prove that? Well, I'm going to prove that by winning awards, by charging good prices, by attracting the best hairdressers to come and work for me. How do you measure those things? So whenever they're doing stuff, if one of those things is going for awards, then obviously we need to be putting in a measure of how they're going for awards. But for you, obviously, you need to think about what you want your business to do. And then once that's defined, then you need to decide what are your underlying success drivers. And these are like the foundations, the roots of the tree, or the supporting structure, or however you want to see it. That without these fundamental things being measured, your business can't succeed. Now, for most people, and again, it will change depending on the type of business you're going to be working with, but thinking about your own, if your customers aren't happy, they're not going to stay, or they're going to start saying bad things about you. So customer happiness is really, really important. In the accountancy world, what we now know is more and more clients are wanting turnaround of their jobs done quickly. Okay, they understand they're using technology all the time. We're in a very fast-paced environment. People want information quickly. Okay, so if you're going to be producing information for a client, then maybe we need to be thinking about how quickly we turn around that work. Okay, so that's another measure that would help that customer delight, that would help our clients to feel happy because we've given them timely information. The second key one is about your team, because if your people aren't happy, and that includes the relationship you may have with an outsourcing company or other third parties. If those people aren't happy, they won't do their best work for you. Okay. And you need them to be pulling, helping you drive this business forward. So having some sort of way of measuring the team happiness and making sure that you invest in your team so that they feel valued and they're growing and they're learning and they're sharing that learning. That's another key thing. And in this case as well, I've put in here customer retention and the value of customers lost. Now, there's a reason why I've put that in this one for an accountant is because one of the thought process we often have with you is about actually working with the right type of clients. Okay, so it may be that you don't want to be getting more clients. Maybe you want to have a similar number of clients, but you want to get better clients and lose the worst. And so you want to be able to measure what are you losing. And sometimes you want to have chosen to lose clients. That's something to celebrate. Sometimes we're losing clients and we're not celebrating. So we need to understand that and the value that customer has to us. And again, you may have something about how you get other leads. So in this case, this is some basic stuff. Got key introducers, but it could be other people, and maybe it's not take to lunch, maybe it's just a way of making contact with them. So keeping in contact with those key introducers that send you leads. So those those are the foundations, because if you're not getting somebody who's helping you, who is thinking about you and perhaps passing your leads, if you've not got happy customers and if you haven't got a happy team, then your business can't survive. And more we're obviously having to focus on that. Now, on then what actually that leads to, and that's why the arrows go up, is actually things we start measuring that we would normally measure. Most of us wouldn't think of measuring the underlying success drivers, but actually they are critical to the future of the business. Maybe not today, but they will have a knock-on effect in the months to come. But what we will then start doing is probably the things that we're quite happy about measuring. So when we think about costs, we'll think about how much of our money is tied up in other things. So how much is tied up with debtors? So what do we need to do about that? What are the costs per client? If we're getting new appointments, how are we making that? And what are our overheads? Again, thinking about how we manage that. Some people, again, with accountancy practices, we may have some costs here to do with software, return on investment, pound per employee costs. It might be other things. If you remember when you did the benchmark report and you did the good, the bad, and the ugly, there were some real key numbers in there to measure. And it may be that you want to build these in. That's your choice, okay? I'm trying to keep it simple. There's a lot of stuff in here already, but it's what do you need to know that you're getting perhaps the efficiency out of your team, or that you're getting the turnaround, or whatever else. And then obviously, if you're growing your business, you need to look at how are you increasing your income. So are you seeing new clients? And then if you are, what is the value of those new clients that you're getting? Because we want to make sure that they're hitting your new average fee, at least your new ideal client profile. Okay. So, it's all right. Often people say to me, January, loads of people, I see loads of prospects in January, people coming in wanting their tax returns done. And then if you are thinking about your ultimate goal, you can make a decision. Do you want to take on that extra work? Have you got the capacity, and are you going to make the profitability on it? Or actually, is it something you can turn away because actually you haven't got that? So I was speaking to an accountant last week who turned away quite a few new tax returns in January because she didn't need them. She didn't need that type of work at that point. They don't meet her ideal client just doing tax returns. And luckily, she doesn't need the income at that point. Other people may need the income, so they might take it on, a choice of that. And then thinking about what other special work you can sell. So as an AVN member, it might be that as you start using the AVN tools, you might want to track, what are you earning from that? What are you what leads are you getting? And thinking about when you are meeting prospects, what is your conversion rate? So again, if you're investing in marketing in some form, whether that's on social media or whether that's in the press or whatever else, you want to know, if you're getting leads, how good are you at converting them? Now, we don't want to be converting 100%, okay, because it's going to be rare that 100% of the leads that come to us are going to be our ideal client. But we do want a pretty good conversion rate on that. So if we're not getting that conversion rate, what do we need to change? Do we need to change our process? So again, maybe in System Builder, you want to look at the heart selling process. You want to look at the closing a sale process. You might want to look at different ways, think about where is it that you have the issue. So again, speaking to a member last week who is doing really well at the heart selling stuff. I'm really, really impressed with him, but he just seems to drop off at the very end, the closure bit. So we were having a conversation about how does he make that comfortable for him to close the sale. So again, what happens is when we start measuring these things, as you can see, what it does is it drives action. So if our debtor days aren't great, then we'll have a look at our credit control. If our conversion isn't great, then why? What do we need to change? If we're not getting prospect appointments, do we need to be doing that to grow our business? And ultimately, then that leads to some key numbers. And these key numbers are just the outcome. Okay, they are the outcome of everything that you do beneath. They are the outcome of your customers being happy, that your turnaround's great, that your team are happy, that you're getting that extra work. All that then leads to turnover, profit, and your number of customers. So the idea is then with all one-page plans is then you're going back and going, is this in line with where we want to be as far as our mission and goals? So that's an example of it. But it doesn't have to be these numbers. And this is really what I wanted to discuss with you. Okay. On the D-Data page, you can change this however you like. Excuse me, I'm going to have to go blow my nose. Okay. So it may be that for you, you want to break down information. So if we start down at the bottom, okay, your underlying success drivers, how are you going to measure your client happiness? There's lots of feedback tools in System Builder. So there's a little really quick, simple feedback at the end of every job document that just lets them to give you a score and a little bit of feedback. There's an annual one that you can send out to clients to get some feedback. Okay. It may be, in this case, like I said, I've got a number of Google reviews. If you know that most people find you by Googling on, and going, okay, accountant in my area, then how are they going to choose you above somebody else? How are you going to make sure that Google ranks you high in that list? Well, the way they do it is on the reviews. So possibly then one of the drivers is getting Google reviews. It's actually asking your clients, would you mind just popping on Google and putting a little quick review in for me? And actually measuring that. Because that's a way of lifting your profile, lifting a way of other businesses and business owners seeing you in order to want to work with you. So there are good drivers here. It may be, in this case, there may be something you want to look about workflow management. So it's not just about turnaround time. Okay. It may be that actually there's lots of other things you want to track. So you may want to track the number of jobs due. And again, there's a sort of a mental shift that we try and help you make, which is rather than working to deadlines, working to a date well before a deadline, so that actually you plan when you do the work in the year so that you can manage your workflow and also you can give the best turnaround for your clients. So maybe you have a structure about that. Talking about the number of tax returns outstanding. So I was speaking to somebody last week who had got all his tax returns done actually by I think he had 4 left by the 31st of December, which just amazed me. But actually his goal is to get them all done by the 30th of September this year. I was like, wow, okay. So he's setting himself some goals. So in these when we look at targets as opposed to the data, he's going to set himself targets for how many he wants in each month. Again, this is the job submitted 3 months before the due date. So again, he wants to encouraging the team to think, not just to deadlines and be at panic stations all the time, but going, okay, no, actually, we've done it 3 months early. If something does kick off, we're okay. Or maybe you're using an outsourcing company. So maybe the days between getting the outsourcing, sending it to outsource, and it coming back for review. So whatever it is that you feel is important to you to manage the workflow, these numbers that's what I'm saying. These numbers have to be really important to you, not to anybody else. And you can insert lines wherever you like and change this around, okay? And if you do it on the data page, then it pulls it through, because you can see it just pulls through from the data, the wording onto the targets, and then you can set your targets. So this allows us to build that structure. Again, you may choose that there's certain breakdowns in overheads you want to check. So again, that might be something you want to manage. One of the things some people are doing this year is obviously cost is a big thing, but we're actually looking at how much are we using different software packages? How much are we using different things? What sort of downtime do we have? Measuring that. Again, that may not be important to you, but it is. If it is, then we can put it in there. Excuse me. On the sales drivers, again, one of the things that people are tracking is not only special work, so they may break the special work down because they want to be seen as specialists in business structure and tax planning. So they may put that down as a line. They may have special work or additional work being actually selling bookkeeping services, because once we can start selling more bookkeeping services, then we've got more information about the client's accounts and information that gives us more information that we can then use to give added value advice. Or it might be extra work orders. So when are your team spotting things that they've done for free in the past that should be charged for, or you've done things for free that should be charged for? And again, that's quite a nice one to measure because the team see how they are contributing. Excuse me. Right. And again, you might want to change this a bit. So you might want to break down the amount you're receiving by direct debit every month. Excuse me. It might be that you want to break down the types of clients you have. So if you've got audit, and maybe you've got accounts and you've got tax, maybe as part of your strategy, you want to change the percentage of each. You want to move things around. Maybe you decide, I'm not doing audits anymore, so therefore I've got a certain amount of income I need to regenerate. So how am I going to plan for that? So whatever is important to you, okay, are the numbers that you put in here. This is just an example. This is just a structure so that you can put in what you want to measure. You can then set yourself targets for each month about how you're going to measure these things. And then each month you can see how close you are to those targets and give yourself a plan that then allows you to take action. So in this case, I've pulled through some of the extra data that I've put through, and I can track actual against targets. So let's pick something where I've got something actual against targets up here. Okay. So if actually I plan to see 5 prospects, but I only saw 3. Okay. But I'd only planned to sort of get maybe £250, thinking I wasn't going to convert many. So I got 1 client at 250, but my target was 1 client at 2,000. So that allows me to think, okay, what is my decision making here? Am I happy that 250 is enough, or actually should I have been looking at meeting different, rather than seeing 5, finding 3 more ideal clients? Okay, so again, it allows you to take action. So that's why one of the things we suggest you do is work with your practice growth on having at least one of your calls a month, looking at some of these numbers and saying, okay, this month I need to work on client happiness, or this month I need to work on debtors, or this month I need to work on getting more direct debits in because cash flow is an issue, or this month I need to look at marketing. And it allows you to drive that forward. Has anybody got any questions about this so far? Anything in the chat box? Okay. So that's the one for you. And again, what I want you to think about is for your practice, what do you need to measure? And even think about, okay, if you were to step away from the practice for a little while and somebody else was running it for you, what do you need to know? Okay. And you may only need to know those key results, but then you'll need to know that somebody else is driving these things below to ensure those key results happen. Okay. So I will just say that for a second. So then I wanted to show you the version that's in System Builder. So System Builder is very much the same. It's a lot plainer. But what I want to show you is the resource. So this is the 1-page plan resource. Can you all see that still? Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Okay, so there is a, right at the very beginning, because it's quite a big thing, there's an expert in a box. Okay, this explains what I've just talked about, that you start from the bottom and you work up. So the goals determine what areas we're going to move forward into, because profits are a consequence of what we're doing. Okay. It also gives you some ideas of how to explain it to your client, because you want to help them be focused. Everybody is so busy that often it's really hard for them to work out where they need to focus their attentions on. So doing something like a 1-page plan for them allows them to sit down and focus purely on the things that need focusing on. Okay. It can also be used as a great discussion if you're doing board view, monthly board meetings. And the idea is that it creates an action plan. Okay. So as I said before, you start with the bottom, the mission statement. And if they haven't got a mission statement, then look at the 24-hour action plan. Again, this is something we will have done with you, which looks at what are the personal goals, what are their business goals. And when you look at the business goals, you can go, okay, in order to achieve those business goals, what do we need to achieve in the next 12 months? Right. How do we break that down into something that we can feel we can take action on? Because sometimes these goals seem so huge, so out of reach. How can we break it down into something that's manageable? Okay. And again, there is an example of one in here. Just if you want to show somebody how it all works. Okay. The important thing, and it explains all of this, okay, is to make sure that you don't overdo it with the numbers. Okay. The one I showed you for you, I think is already got too many numbers in, honestly, to measure everything. You don't want to be spending hours measuring things. You don't want your client to spend hours measuring things. There will be key things that currently they need to measure, but they're not. And that's fine. We can help them put in place simple things initially to help them measure stuff until we can automate the measurement. The important thing is to say to them, look, let's just do a handful. Okay. I'm not here to make life difficult. If we can pull some information out of the software you already have, great. If not, let's find a simple way of doing it. Okay. So if we start with the underlying success drivers, if you remember that I said were the roots or the foundation, we actually have a whole load of ideas here. So thinking about the type of business you're going to work with. So this is at the beginning, I said, you think about a client that you want to work with. One of the biggest drivers we've said is customer delight, is client happiness. Okay. So how can we find ways of measuring that? So I showed you that maybe you want to do Google, refer things like testimonials on Google. Maybe that's something else. Maybe it's a different platform you want those on where, your particular client goes. Okay. But it might be that we can find other ways. So initially, we could do scores from questionnaires. So the simple questionnaires, the feedback from every job type things, you could use with them. It could be just something simple like the unsolicited testimonials or thank yous. How do we get people to give you thank yous? If you are selling products in a shop, okay, then how many times does the client say thank you to you? And this is for your team to just record that the client said thank you. Okay, maybe it's you can get them to put something online to say how great you were. Often you go to a happens to me often in Tesco's and B&Q that you get your receipt and at the bottom it says, today you were served by Donna. Would you mind going online and just putting a score about how good Donna was today? And that's just their way of getting some customer delight and also some feedback on their team. There are other ways of doing it. You could just, you could suggest to your client that they just have an iPad, with have you seen them again, that have just got three faces on, a smile, a sort of okay. So we've got a green smile, an amber okay, and a red grumpy face. Just literally just tap the box where you feel it is important, what you think about it. It could be actually that if you feel that you're doing a great job, it might be actually just to do with actually complaints. So if you've got or returns, so if you've got a client that sells products, or how many times do they get returned, and what is the reason for the return? Okay, it could be that you do things on, if you're delivering stuff. So I've noticed that again with Amazon, they deliver stuff and then you get a little text or something that appears on your phone that says, your driver, John, has just delivered your parcel. How did he do? And you press a button. Great. Okay. who's a bit late, whatever you feel like that's like, okay? So there are lots of ways of measuring this, okay? And the important thing is to find something that's easy for people to do at the beginning, okay? You can make it more complex. You can do annual questionnaires. You can do, surveys. You can do pulling the clients in and getting them to discuss your business, all that sort of stuff. Longer term, if you want to delve even deeper into these areas. But initially, we just want to be working on this sort of basic stuff. Anything that's simple, okay? And if you're going to do things, if you're going to say, right, I want people to give me Google reviews, what are the systems that are in place that your team makes sure that they ask the client to give you a Google review? Okay, so we need to make sure that the team are aware that this is an important number because it drives the business, and therefore they are part of generating that number, the actual this month against the target. And the other thing is, when you put targets in, don't make them so extreme there's not a chance in hell of hitting them, okay? That you may have a long-term target that's really quite big, but in this first section, what can we do to break it down so people feel that they are moving forward? The other one we talked about was people, okay? And again, there are lots of ways of measuring team happiness. Again, simple little resourcing system builder that can help you. Just ask the question. But it may be that in some businesses, there is a massive team turnover. So maybe it's the percentage leaving in the year. What do we need to do? Is that something then that we go, okay, we've got a high team turnover. Why is that? Is that because management is not great? Is that because training is not great? Is that because we're just in an industry like McDonald's where we don't expect people to be here forever? But we're getting the best out of them and we're training them as much as we can while they're with us, okay? It could be about productivity. It could be whatever else you want to do that you think is about getting the potential of your team. So some of that may be, and again, when you think about team happiness, this leads to a whole raft of resources that you've got in System Builder that just talk about ways of motivating your team, ways of engaging the team, and everything that's in System Builder, whether it's a resource that you would suggest it's something for your clients, or whether it's in there written for you, doesn't mean you can't use it with a client. Okay, if there are systems and resources in System Builder that you think are relevant, print them out, give them, share them, share the learning. We also know with people that a lot of people, they need some sort of creativity in their job. They need some way of developing and growing. They need some sort of career plan, whatever, something that they feel that they're making a difference. That's what we all want to do. So how are we making sure that we're investing in them? How are we making sure that we're taking on board their ideas? So it could be as simple as total new ideas generated. Could be you just have you say to your client, right, you just have a bowl or something in the office and anybody can come up with any idea. They just write it on a piece of paper, they stick it in the bowl. Okay, there are no bad ideas. The only rules are the idea is to help develop the business, whether that's to help the client, whether it's to help the team, whether it's help the business as a whole. Okay, and they can just stick them all in a bowl, and at the end of the month you count them, how many, okay, and then you go through them with the team and go, right, this is a great idea for now, this is a great idea but it needs parking, this is a good idea but maybe not in this particular business, but you discuss them, and then you can then start measuring perhaps the ideas that were implemented after that. Again, it's about allowing people to feel like they're part of the growth of the business, because that's when it'll happen. And obviously training and getting a return on that training. So again, for us, we spend a lot of money and time on our own career development, and our CPD, and the same with our team. So we're spending money on that. We're spending money on equipment to help them, making sure that that investment is registered and that we're getting something back from that learning. And importantly, then looking at actually how we can measure some of these things. So here's some ideas about, measuring perhaps the number of systems that have been put in place. If we know that that's part of the business needs is to systemize things because it's all relying on key people, let's measure how many systems. Maybe, again, it's about productivity. And one of the things you can use is the key success driver mapping out of System Builder to be able to go through the process of producing a widget or something and looking at where the issues are. If that's something that comes out of the conversations here. Again, it could be quality, how many things are returned because of defects. So you can think about your client and you can ask them these sorts of questions. Okay, you can have this resource with you, and you can talk about this and say, okay, what sort of things are coming out? But normally they will know these things that need to measure, but you can just nudge them by showing them these things. Okay, and again, you don't want to pick every single one. Let's just pick a couple that are easy to measure at the beginning. Often with a one-page plan, we might only start with, say, 5 numbers that we can measure. We may have the other ones on the list to say that we do want to measure these in future, but at the moment, we're only measuring these 5. Okay. And then we're going to look at sales drivers. So that's the next block up. Okay. So looking at maybe how the sales process works. If it's a referral model, how is that working? How can we measure that? If it's a repeat business model, how do we make sure that we've got active customers? How do we measure the proportion that remain as active customers? So all of these things are in here. Production. There are all sorts of different models here. Okay. So lots of ideas of how you could talk to them about how they look at their sales drivers. But if they are somebody who has to tender for every job and has to keep growing, then, how many calls have they made? What is the size of their order book? How many meetings have they got booked? Those sorts of things. And behind the scenes of that, again, you see some of the actions that come out of this, are just really simple things like, if the issue is that they're not getting the calls in, or what's stopping them getting the calls in? Is it because they hate picking up the phone? Some people, they just don't like that. So yesterday I was talking to a group of small businesses, and they're actually all in the service providing industries. And we were talking about actually the fact that you've got to call people. You've got to try and set up meetings for the future. You've got to develop relationships with people in order to sell them services in the long term. But it's not something that excites them. As service people, what excites them is the delivery. It's the doing whatever they're going to do with those clients. They don't enjoy what they class as the admin. They're making the calls, they're doing the admin part, the finance, stuff like that. They don't enjoy that. But it's critical that they do that. So yesterday we talked about how do we make that something that's enjoyable to do as opposed to something that's a task, something that you think, oh no, I've got to pick up the phone. We talked about how do we make it so that it's something that's measurable and enjoyable. So again, lots of things you could talk to them about doing. Then obviously the cost drivers. So thinking again about the type of business you're working with. Are they in production? Are they in service? What are the costs? What are the issues? There's been a lot of people who've obviously been hit by costs going up, whether that's been light and heat, or whether that's been materials, or whether that's been wages. And it's about managing that and measuring that to make sure that, as we know from accountants, that the gross profit is still good. Okay, if those costs are going up, we are making sure that we're passing those on to the customer or finding a way of dealing with that. So this allows you again to talk about those sorts of things. Where is the money locked up in the business? What sort of stock is blocked? Again, I was talking to an accountant who works with an online retail company, and she's been doing lots of work with them because when she actually asked them to start looking at stock turnover and there was a huge chunk of their stock that hardly moved. Money was locked in this stock and it wasn't being moved. But then there were probably, I can't remember how many she said, but say out of 100 lines, There was probably 15 that were the ones that turned over fast. People wanted all the time. And so having looked at that with them and seeing that, they could then go, okay, well, actually, maybe we shouldn't be selling some of this other stock that just sits here for 9 months of the year. Maybe that's not relevant to have that money tied up in that stock. And she saved them a huge amount of money because that stock is now being managed. So there are little things that we can do that then help them move that forward. So just thinking about that. And then obviously that leads to things and maybe wanting to think about. So obviously we think about income and we think about growth. Maybe they've got a thing about market share. They want to have that. Maybe there are other things that we want to be focusing with them. Okay. Ultimately, they need to understand that profits is a consequence of doing all these extra things. So when we look at those things, we come up with basically a blank plan where we talk to them and go, right, let's start at the bottom. What is your goal? What is your mission? Right. How are we going to manage the things that drive it? Okay. And if it's a one-man band, again, what are we doing to make sure that, everything's supported for that person? Systems might be a big underlying success driver. Outsourcing might be a big underlying success driver in order to make sure that the business is not dependent on one person alone. If it's a big company, what is it that affects them? It could be competition. Okay. It could be keeping up with what's going on in technology, AI, all those other things that are beginning to affect businesses all over the world. Maybe we need to be doing some measurements around that. So this allows us to come up with a document that may have as many measurements as they would like, that they see fit. And like I said, you may have a list, but actually say to them, look, for the next 6 months, we're only measuring 3 of these. Because from what you've told me, this is the key area. And we'll look at that. So it gives us lots and lots of opportunity to have conversations with clients. So I know some of you have got some clients in mind. Is there anybody that wants to, let me just stop this share. Anybody who wants to talk about a particular client or anybody who's got some issues and thinking, well, what would we do in that area?
Well, on that, interestingly, I do have a client who is a sales trainer.
Okay.
They do, who's concerned at the moment because people are reluctant to spend, is what the gist of the conversation we're having.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, bear with, I'm going to have to.
We were saying at the beginning, we've all got colds.
Oh, I'll try again. And on that, some of the sales drivers, he does that already. I was wondering what's the best way, or a way, not the best way, a way of getting to go, right, you're sort of, that's up here, but we need to get further back down the page, if you like. Because he does, when he's asked, he says, oh yeah, I do keep tabs of things, like the number of calls and all that, and conversions, because that's what he's
trained in, yeah.
Selling on as a part of his business.
Yeah.
But I was wondering, what ideas about how to get into focus back down the page, if you like?
Yeah. So how does he get his customers? How does he get his referrals?
They mainly come through online, inbound calls. He does a fair amount of outbound calling as well. But one of the things I suggest him do is perhaps just ring round all the people he's actually done work for in the past at the moment, because there are the issue is there are a couple of big jobs which were scheduled for January, which stopped.
Right.
No reason, and so he blocked out time because everything was set up to go, and suddenly he's got time but no work.
Yeah.
That's one of the issues. So he just thought there's short term, but the easiest thing to do is to phone around. He does some subcontracting work or associate work, as it's called, for people. So we'll phone them and tell them you're now suddenly available, because he'd said you weren't available. So that might be a start. But again, have you got any ideas about getting to focus a bit more? Perhaps it's just a matter of asking, well, why he's doing it. There's something I ask all my clients. Why?
Yeah, I mean, what is the ultimate outcome? I mean, is this I think you've got to go right back to the goal setting tool and find out what it is that he wants to achieve and what the business is doing to give him his personal goals.
Yeah.
And then I think for him, on the underlying success drivers, if he is getting his leads online or through referrals or whatever, then we need to start tracking client happiness. We need to start tracking the number of
to write that down.
Comments, and the amount of testimonials that he can put on his website. The new testimonials.
I think that's something he doesn't actually do at all. I was trying to think of all the stuff he and I talked about, which tended to be a bit more, focused on process and cash, basically.
Yeah.
Rather than, how about all this? What's the word? Intangible or ephemeral?
It is intangible, yeah, and that's the thing. But
I've got like happiness thing.
But all of that stuff, what it does is it leads to leads in the future, and that's the thing.
I think it's something that's probably at the back of his mind to ask for, but like the rest of us, goes, busy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's finding a simple way of doing it and a comfortable way of doing it.
Between us, he and I can come up with the words.
Exactly.
That's for a living. He can bounce it off me. The Welsh wizard, as he calls me. Which also, sorry, does anyone else want to say anything? Because I have someone else as well.
Just quickly on him as well. It's interesting, isn't it, about getting those testimonials, but maybe also trying to get him to start collecting stories. So with real numbers in. Yeah. So I did the sales training and their conversion went from this % to this.
That's good. Hang on. I've got to write this down because otherwise it'll be.
Yeah, because that sort of thing, that's a
case study almost, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And maybe it's just a case of, I've got this with one of the members I'm working with at the moment, AVA members. We've just committed to like one case study a quarter. We're not saying huge amounts, but we're getting a little story with some key numbers that can go on.
That would be really good because I know there's one client that they really benefited from having him come in and they wanted him to come in and do some more.
Because you want, in a way, what you're trying to do is create the positioning of him to be on. He doesn't have time for people. He's so good. He's got a waiting list. Yeah. That's what he'd like to have, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So that's what we're trying to build. We want to build him a waiting list. So what can we do to be able to say that?
Excellent. Thank you. Does anyone else have a question they want to ask? Because I do have someone else that I can have a quick question with, but I don't want to hog the session.
Yeah, if people want to put anything in the chat box or they just want to unmute themselves, they don't want to come on camera, fine. Go on, let's do yours while they're thinking about it.
Okay. Another one's a graphic designer. We're having a bit of a reorganization at the moment. Anyway, that's slowly progressing. But the director that will be remaining, they get a lot of their work from, they work in the third sector. It's mainly to do with charity.
Right. And
they have a number of established accounts. They just are on the preferred supplier list for a number of very large organizations. So they're getting that and just wondering, again, it is peculiar because it's not just one person in a charity. Who deals, then people have their own projects. So it's really weird. So it's not just one person. If you consider one of the cancer charities, people are working on different aspects of it and they get different parts of the different jobs that are going on.
Right.
So again, it's trying to work out, well, a lot of it's referral because they know who he is. So they just come to him. And there's some other new stuff that they've got on retainer, which is interesting. But again, it's a case of, I suppose, wanting to bed those people in a bit more. So it can be very fickle. Yeah, you can go from, if someone leaves, then the new person might go, we're not having you as the design agency. We want someone else because I've elected you. So there, it's that sort of where to start with on that one.
And is he still looking for new clients, or is he
Oh yeah,
get more work from the
at
existing?
the moment, the bulk of the jobs, it uses a lot of subcontractors because we have we've built up a list of trusted subbies who we know. He knows what their work's like. I think they charge reasonable rates, and so between us, we've got, yeah, that seems like a good deal. and they turn around promptly.
Right.
So that's good. But it's also now thinking about just longer term. One of the things we want to do is think about systemizing the business so that he can work a bit less.
Yeah.
On that. so it's a bit sort of we've got a vague idea, but I can't quite put into get it from there out there to say to him, this is what we need to be doing or should be thinking about.
Okay. So for him, if I think what he needs to do is within the charities that he's working with, the people that he works with, again, he needs to get some sort of testimonial pack made up, which is like, these are the people I've worked for within this charity. This is what they've said. This is my example. If they've got to take on new people, why should they trust him? And if they've got all these other people in the background that have trusted him,
so
that would help.
Yes, really, it's getting him to formalize that. He does it some of the time, but again, it's like the rest of us. We do it some of the time, but we don't do it all the time.
Yeah, and sometimes again, it's just so your systems are right. Having a system and a little checklist that just sort of goes, like, have you remembered to do this before you close off the account?
Excellent. Yep, fine, thank you.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, well,
for him, I think if he's the one that's going to get the work, which it sounds like he's the one that gets work and then outsources it to obviously his little group of people.
Yep.
Then that's really focusing on getting a pipeline of that and getting known, and also perhaps getting some private work outside of the charity industry as well, because it's where the money is, isn't it? And unfortunately, charities, it's a bit hit and miss sometimes.
Oh yeah, well, charities say, well, some of these charities, it's a case of we're big enough. If you want to be associated with us, this is what we pay.
Yeah.
You can then say you work for us.
Yeah.
Or you have worked on projects we are involved with, but this is what we pay.
And that's fine if that gives them enough clout and they're allowed to use that in their marketing. And in which case he needs to really be pushing his marketing, and how many people have come to him because of his association with that charity.
Yeah.
And maybe having some sort of question, how did you find us? Have you seen my work with which charities, so that he can see whether it's worth having that.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
Brilliant. Anybody else got any questions? No? Well, thank you, everybody. I hope this has been useful. I'm hoping that, you've got somebody you can think of talking about this and using this, maybe just in a meeting, just saying, okay, this is some ideas I've got about how we could help improve your business. And as you know, this links to the performance measurement improvement system, which is the process of being able to talk about all sorts of things that you can do to help them with their numbers. But I'm hoping initially start with yourself so that you can see how it works. Okay. Work on yourself. And then it's very easy then to say to a client, well, I do this with my business. And actually it's helped me think about these areas. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. You too.
You take care. Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye.